Shalom, balance. Welcome back, all. We are back in the lab. And again, I'm bringing some more feminine energy with me. I have with me the world-renowned, the incomparable one, Laura Sanko, a former professional fighter, presenter, broadcaster, and I think a little bit of everything in between as well. So welcome.
Thank you. Quite the introduction. That is a lot to live up to, including the feminine energy. I don't know how feminine I am today, but I'll do my best to bring that side of me out.
No problem at all. So thank you again for coming on the broadcast. What we are going to attempt to do is to get to know you in a little bit more detail, past, present, and future. So let's take it back. Let's take it back. So you're currently in Kansas.
Yeah, technically Missouri. It's very confusing since the name of the city is Kansas City. But
Missouri,
yes,
yes.
I'm in KC. Yeah.
Casey, okay. Is that where you grew up?
Essentially, I moved here when I was about 7, so I wasn't born here, but I was raised here and have lived here most of my life. I spent a few years living in New York City under a different career path,
Okay.
but mostly here. Yes.
Okay. So going back, so we're still in early years. So growing up, what was your aspirations? What was your sort of your potentially ideal career as a youngster?
Wow, that is a great question. In fact, I don't even know if I've ever been asked that before. It certainly wasn't this. It certainly wasn't what I'm currently doing. I think maybe not so much as a small kid, but in high school, I was really, really science oriented. I loved science. I did really, really well in science. I even got sent away to one of those smart kid camps where we studied cancer and did all sorts of
Mm.
stuff. So I think for a long time there, I thought I'd be a doctor or do something in a science-based field, and then I just decided to punch people.
Very different transition, wasn't it?
Very, very.
Well, I guess at some point through your science sort of growing and sort of learning, I guess physiology and biology must have played a part in that.
I mean, possibly. I think more interesting. I think you got to dial it back a little bit further, even than that. I think that I have a very curious mind,
Okay.
and that always lent itself to science. And I think it lends itself to wanting to know the why of
Mm,
everything, whether that's why a certain punch lands effectively in a certain situation, or why a fighter is the way that he or she is and what their story is. So I think it all comes from this. I'm one of those people where I can't let my mind rest
mhm.
until I answer a question. I will ruin a dinner out. I will ruin a dinner out by Googling on my phone because some random topic comes up that I have to find out about because I don't know. So I think
Yes.
that's really what it is.
Knowledge is power, and it seems like early on in our conversation that clearly you have a thirst for knowledge and like to understand new information, grasp new ideas and stuff like that.
Yeah, I do. And I think it's part of the reason why um another reason I can ruin a dinner party is because this should be the name of the show. Why Laura Sanko can ruin a dinner. Is because I'm one of those people that is annoyingly, oh, I've done that. I've done that. I have done, I'm not going to say well, but I've done a bizarrely varied number of things in my life, whether it's career paths or just activities I've gotten into for a period of time, and they're all over the board. But I think that's what it comes down to is something will pique my interest even a little bit, and I'll just go balls to the wall
Okay.
in like discovering what it is. And I used to ride horses competitively. I got a scholarship for piano performance. Like I'm all over the place.
Very varied. So if you enjoy something and you're interested in something, as you say, you're going to give it 110%.
Yeah, that's not how I phrased it. You phrased it much more eloquently. Thank you.
So based upon that, then let me take a wild guess. Star sign wise, based
Ooh,
upon what you've just said, could you possibly be? I'm gonna go for two. My first thing I would say would be either would be a Gemini.
no,
The second one would be a Capricorn.
no.
Okay, okay, totally wrong. Okay,
It's all right. I was so ready with the clapping. I was so ready. I was so ready. I'm a Sagittarius.
Sagittarius.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm December 7 is my birthday.
early. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
I
Okay.
don't know much about the signs. Does that mean I'm a blend? Like, am I early in the what day?
Exactly. You're early
Oh,
in the cusp. You're early in the cusp, so you can have traits of Capricorn as well.
Capricorn. Okay.
But yes, okay, okay. So moving forward, what was the moment or the catalyst that made you say, I want to, as you say, punch people in the face and possibly submit them?
Um, I think that's another thing that just sort of built up in me over time, and not in any sort of angry way. I had an older brother. I still have an older brother. I don't mean to make it sound like he's passed away. And we were extremely close growing up, extremely close. I was kind of the little mascot of his group of friends. So I basically grew up around guys
Mhm.
that were 4 to 5 years older than I am. So I was always a little bit guyish in that way, a little bit of a tomboy. And I was always trying to keep up and I was always trying to impress them and, get their attention. So I tended to do things that were maybe a little bit outside of the box. The other component to this is I grew up in a very conservative religious household, very, very conservative. And I think while I still I actually appreciate how I was raised, and I still practice my faith. It just looks a lot different than what my parents wish it did.
It's
Uh,
evolved.
yes, it's evolved greatly. I think that being in the background of everything I did, there was probably a little part of me that wanted to be wild or unconventional in my own way. So I started doing martial arts when I was a young teenager, and but
What did
more
you
of the
start doing? Was it
karate.
judo? Karate? Ah,
Karate. Yeah,
yeah.
I wish I had started in judo, man. Judo or jujitsu. I wish I had started in one of those arts, but I didn't. I started in karate, and I got my black belt at the end of high school. And then I really didn't do anything after high school, and it wasn't until I went through a really tough time in my personal life, which I'm happy to talk about, or not, either way. I went through a
It's
tough
up
time in
to
my
you.
personal life after college, and I just I needed a distraction and I needed an outlet to allow me to take my mind off of what was going on in my life. And there are very few, first of all, exercise is a great antidepressant.
Hmm.
But jogging, for instance, doesn't do it for me. Cause then when I'm jogging, I just think more. I'm alone with my thoughts, and that's not good when I'm in a bad place. Right. So,
Yes.
and same thing with weightlifting. So I sought out an activity where when you're doing it, you literally cannot think about anything else because it's so in the moment.
Yes.
And I would find myself after 2 hours on the mat, and I was so intense with it at first because it was my escape. I would find myself after 2 hours, I would just feel better. The problems would still be there, but
Yeah.
my brain didn't feel quite so wrapped up in it. And
It
that's
was
really
that
what.
rest of sorts after having that sort of competition on the mat.
What's that?
Your brain was at rest of sorts
Yes.
after. Yeah.
Yep.
So.
You want to know? Uh, you're like, how do I phrase this?
So, without obviously going into too much detail, I guess it was a personal relationship that was
Yeah.
potentially, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's okay. I don't mind talking about it. I think it was funny because when you asked your first question, it dovetails into this discussion as well. I got married when I was 23 to my first husband. This is my second marriage. This is my
Okay.
second one. Um,
Oh,
I got married when I was 23, and I think part of that disaster was, I grew up not necessarily, it's not like my parents were telling me you have to get married and that's the goal, but it's a little bit implied sometimes in religious settings that for a woman to grow up and have a family and raise her children in the Lord that's the ultimate, that is the goal. They don't necessarily put a time limit on it, but a lot of people in that group get married pretty young, also due to the, let's not have sex before we're married whole thing. So I did that and it was terrible.
Oh dear.
I was married 6 months and it was not good. He had some psychopathic tendencies
Oh.
that I discovered pretty quickly, and so I, I fled that situation. But I also was carrying around a lot of guilt and embarrassment over, because
Mhm.
my whole life I'd been like prom queen, valedictorian, never got in trouble.
Can you
Never.
explain? I hear that term, valid. What was it? Valedictorian.
Yeah.
What is that? What actually is that?
A valedictorian means that you graduated first in your senior high school class. So your last year of what we consider high school over
Mhm.
here before you move on to university, you got the top grades of anybody in your class.
Great. Okay.
Oh. So I had been on this path to perfection. And then here I went and fucked up the one thing that I was
Mm.
really not supposed to fuck up, which is marriage and life. So I was I was reeling from that, and that's when I found MMA, and MMA went on, I would say, another 2 times later throughout my life to kind of save me in a similar sense, not from a relationship issues, but
Yes.
other tough times.
It's your quote unquote safe and happy place.
It really is. It really is. Which sounds weird to people who watch it on TV and only see it as violence, but
Yeah.
it's a lot more than that for
It
sure.
is, it really is. And these are one of the reasons I like to have conversations with presenters, former fighters, current fighters, just to not just humanize them, but to let people understand that there is a really bigger picture out there, and people are very diverse and do things for very different reasons. Um, and ultimately, it's about the drive for competition,
Yeah.
for success, and to ultimately to win. I think there's been some people don't necessarily carry the full aspects of martial arts through when it comes to professional fighting, where you get some antics that take place, because generally it's supposed to be about testing your skills, your wits, your abilities, and at the end you shake hands and it's you did good but you won maybe, or I think we need to get back to the real core essence of what martial arts is.
I agree with that. It's beautiful when it's done that way. And I had a lot of reservations about allowing my son to watch MMA a whole lot when he was little. Just, I'm not overly protective, but it's just, it can be a lot when you don't really feel like they understand what's going on. But
Hmm.
I watched so much of it and it's such a part of my life that I realized it was going to be impossible to keep him from watching it with me. So I kind of went the other way, to where no matter what's going on, I just don't allow it to be a big deal. And I've talked to him a lot about how, this is not, the difference between this and violence
Hmm.
is that in a violent act, someone doesn't want to be there. Someone is aggressing toward another person, and that person who's being um, aggressed upon, I'm sure that's not even a verb, doesn't want to be there, and wishes they were not in that situation. And that's not the case here. And so I always point out to him the fights where after they just are going to war, they're hugging each other. And I said, see, this is not, that's, you wouldn't do that if this was a violent situation. So I agree with you. I think that that's some of the most beautiful moments in MMA are after a hard fought fight, and sometimes a lot of trash talk in the build up to it. And then it's just gone because it was released.
Yes. That's a key word. It's released in that moment, in those 15 minutes or those 25 minutes.
Yeah.
It's put out there. You've bore your everything. You've potentially even not just sweat you've exchanged blood as well. So that is as close as you can get to someone in a physical sense, battle wise. So yeah, I think more people need to, and also that's the end result of months of years of training, multiple different disciplines, grappling, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, boxing, kickboxing, whatever, and then your specialist type stuff. There's a lot that goes behind before we actually see that finished product. And
So
on,
much.
so much. And then, as you say, the self promotion of the fighters trying to get their name out there so they can, potentially climb up in the ranks and get fights that they want, rather than getting other competition. It's a balancing act. It really is a balancing act. Um, and I think with the right team and the right clearly mentality, you can be successful. You can be successful. I think that for me, I'm starting to realize a lot more now that the fighters need to be a bit more selfless, um, in respect to what they're actually doing and what stage they're on, whether it's the UFC, whether it's Bellator, PFL, One Championship. You are fulfilling your dreams. You're getting paid trustfully as much as you're worth, but you're also a potential role model to thousands of people, and that's a big responsibility. Some people wear it well. Other people, it's challenging. It can be challenging.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think a lot of fighters are becoming more and more aware, especially with the prominence of social media these days, of how important their platform really is. You see people like Dustin Poirier or Francis Ngannou have these incredible charities that they have. This career has allowed them to give, and certainly that's not the extent of the list. It's just two people that come to mind.
Hmm.
This platform allows them to really give back in a way that otherwise they wouldn't necessarily have the megaphone, to be able to
Mm,
do. I will say though, I think as much as I would love everyone to have this very spiritual martial arts only approach to MMA, I I do appreciate and I don't mind the mixture of personalities and takes on. I think people can cross lines, and I don't
mhm,
love that, of course, but I do think it takes all kind. I look at the Jorge Masvidal's and the Colby Covingtons of the world, and frankly, the storylines wouldn't be nearly as interesting if we didn't have people that rubbed us the wrong way, or people that inspired us in a maybe, I'm thinking of Jorge here, where like I wouldn't necessarily call him a role model, but he's real, and that part of him I very much look up to. I mean, that guy is literally what you see is what you get every moment of the day. And when it comes to someone like Colby, I don't love how he promotes himself, but I do appreciate it. And I hate to ruin his game here, his charade, but like I've spent time around him a little bit when the cameras are not rolling.
mm.
And he is one of the easiest people to work with. He's so nice. He's so polite. He's low maintenance, which you would not expect him to be. So I can also get behind some of the showmanship and the characters
Mhm.
that MMA brings out in people.
I would agree. I would totally agree. And the two examples you brought up there are good examples to bring because they're polar opposites. Gamebred, as you say, he's as real as it gets of sorts. But as you say, I mean, if I know with social media and there's so much that's happening within the world and stuff, fans and people generally have fickle memories. If we rewind back to not too long ago, 3 years ago, Colby was the most polite, humble person you'd ever meet, and that would be on camera, off camera. For whatever reason, he stated that it's down to him not getting fights and promoted well, etc. He's had to create this sort of WWE style Henry Cejudo kind of wrestling persona kind of thing
Yeah.
to get somewhere, but he's very, very skilled. I think it was very unfortunate, the title fight between him and Kamaru.
I know.
Very, very unfortunate. It was an excellent back and forth. I did expect them to mix it up a little bit more, but clearly both was worried about each other's wrestling prowess. Um, but I really think, and I know it's sports entertainment, and there clearly seems to be a bigger focus on the entertainment side versus the sporting side. I think really, based upon the controversy, that should have been run back as a part two. I know it's still there in the future potentially, um, but that should have been a part two. It was so late. What was it? 40 seconds, 20 seconds at the fifth round?
I know it was less than a minute. I know it was less than a minute, and man, and it was such a good fight up
It
to that point.
was.
Such a great fight. I agree with you. I would absolutely love to see that fight again. I'd love to see him fight Jorge, and he's whether he's has needed to take it as far as like when he was the comments about Matt Hughes and stuff, like some of the stuff he said, like, oh my God,
Yeah.
please, wow, I can't believe you just went there. Definitely he's crossed the line a few times in my book, but I would say overall his tactic has worked, and the long game of when he's done with MMA, setting himself up for potential transition into WWE is so smart. So smart, because everybody in this sport has got to think about their future after this sport, because it's not an old guy's game.
It certainly isn't. It certainly isn't, as we saw from the last events with Shogun.
I guess it can be sometimes, but
it's a rarity. I mean, physically, with all of the, as I say, the training and the preparation before the fight, it's a lot. And then actually you've got people still do heavy sparring, which I think in these days with the growth of MMA, and the technology and the knowledge about head traumas and stuff, people are still putting themselves through the ringer, and the older you get up there, it's it's a more of a risk. There's a lot more risks involved in that respect. So yeah, maximize the time that you've got. Look for the avenues, whether it's presentation, color, broadcasting, going into WWE. You need to find something which you are happy with, and you can make some additional revenue, because this fighting game it doesn't last forever. It really doesn't.
And it doesn't. And most fighters are not going to have the type of financial windfalls that allow them to set themselves up for the rest of their life. I think John Jones could probably retire and not have to work again, but there's only a handful of fighters that I think could really say that and feel like they've just set themselves up for the rest of their life. So people have to think about, the vast majority of the roster has to think about life outside of MMA. And it's tricky because when you're in the sport and you're consumed by it, it's the only thing you see. It's the only thing you love. It's the only thing you want to do. And coaching and running a gym is tough, and not everyone is capable of making that a success either. So.
Well, that seems to be it seems like a natural progression. I love, fighting, training. I'm technically good in certain areas. Why not open up a gym? It seems like a natural progression, but from what you're saying and from the conversations I've had, it's a very tough game. Cost-wise, your overheads, paying in, staff and stuff like that. It's not as easy as some people think it might be.
Yeah, there are very few people, I feel like, that have done that truly successfully, and I'm fortunate enough to be, I feel like, involved and friends with one of the better examples of that in James Krause. His gyms and his series of gyms, I should say, because he's got the main one and then sister gyms that he started beyond that he shares ownership in. It's pretty incredible, and anybody who has questions about their future and whether they should open a gym or not, or what they should do. He is such a good person to look to as an example, and reach out to him. And ask him questions, because it's funny. I live actually about, I don't know, maybe half a mile as the crow flies from him.
Wow.
Even though I live on a ranch, he just bought $1 million house on the lake that's just a ways off from me. So from where he came from, which was, a trailer park in a really shitty town in Missouri, to where he is now is awesome. It's been nothing but hard work. It takes it's a certain type of personality, not just a love of MMA. It takes a certain type of personality to be able to be an entrepreneur and really run a gym like a successful business. You can love MMA, you can even be a good coach, but to run a successful gym is a whole nother skill set that's not for everybody.
You are, excuse me, you're indeed correct. It's running a business, gym, whatever it is, it's many people can do that, but to run a successful one, that takes a special person, a lot of sleepless nights potentially, long hours, dedication, and everything in between kind of thing.
Absolutely. A lot of time away from the family too, unfortunately.
Repeat that again, sorry.
I said a lot of time away from the family as well. I mean,
Oh,
there are a lot of sacrifices that,
yeah,
he and his wife make to make that gym successful.
definitely, definitely. So going back to your fighting career, how did that start? Did you start I guess would you have to do a few amateur fights before
Yeah.
you go? Okay.
Yeah. So like I said, I started training just as a distraction because I wanted to learn another martial art that was less, chopping at the air,
Hmm.
more contact. And I just fell in love with it and I was fortunate at the time that where I started training, I was essentially getting a 4-hour private lesson every day for the first year. I kind of ran into a Kansas City UFC OG by the name of Rob Kimmons. He was one of the first fighters out of this area to make it to the UFC. And it was just by happenstance that I came across him and his main training partner. And they allowed me to kind of like shoehorn myself in there. I had to beg him for a while though. It was not an immediate like, oh yeah, you can sure you can come train with us, random small girl. Um, it took a lot of like convincing them that I was there to work and I really wanted to learn. But once they let me in, it was like I said, I was getting so much. It was just us, and
Mm.
I was getting so much one-on-one instruction, and I was there all the time. So I feel like I picked it up, and then I moved away to New York City and trained there for a few years. And then when I moved back to Kansas City is when I joined what is now Glory MMA and Fitness. It had a different name at the time. And back then, James was just a teammate.
Mhm.
But the culture of the gym was like fight. Everybody here fights. It's cool if you want to come here and work out, but come on, like let's get you a fight. And I kind of took them a while to talk me into taking one amateur fight. They were like, oh, be a good story to tell the grandkids one day. And I don't back down from being goaded into much, so I decided to do it, and then just fell in love with that feeling of imposing my will on someone, which makes me sound a little sick in the head, but she
Not
knew
at all.
she was there willingly. So
Exactly. Fair exchange.
yeah, no, it was amazing. And then I had I could, I had 7 or 8 amateur fights. I think I was 7-1. I was either 6-1 or 7 and was as an amateur. I don't remember because I had so many fights cancel and fall through, and none of the websites have all of my fights. But I think I was 7-1 as an amateur, and then had the one pro fight in Invicta.
And how was that experience? Because at that time, it was a pretty new kind of organization.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was incredible, and I'm not gonna. It was. I was thinking about it, and this is gonna make me sound petty or I don't know. But last night, a teammate of mine, Alexa Culp, had her pro debut in Invicta, and she got a second round rear naked choke. And they were showing clips of our whole gym was at the gym with our big screen. Everybody's there watching and screaming and cheering her on. Back when I had my pro debut in Invicta, and I also got a second round rear naked choke finish, no one gave a shit. Because like you say, it was a new promotion and no one really knew what it meant. I mean, at the time though, it really was the top of the mountain for women's MMA because women were not yet in the UFC. So it was an incredible experience. I was fortunate that most of my amateur fights took place on Titan FC. And even at that time, it was televised on a channel here called Axis. So even during my amateur career, I had cameras in my face and kind of had the feel of a big show. We had, Jamie Varner and Bobby Lashley were some of the fighters that were on card I was
Legends.
on. Yeah. So like I had a little taste of what it felt like to be in a bigger promotion really early on. So that kind of helped with the transition to Invicta for sure.
Okay, so you had your one professional fight. And what was the transition between, and what was the time frame in between that and your current work that you're doing?
So I won my fight and I got the finish and I was so pumped and so excited, and I immediately got rebooked for another fight and I started camp, and I really did not like how my weight cut went for that fight. It was really, really tough, really tough. And so
So,
go ahead.
can I ask
Yeah.
what sort of weight were you cutting to get down to?
I weighed then about this. I still kind of weigh the same, which is about 118 walking around. So 13 pounds. I mean, I would kind of diet down and lean down to maybe 114.
Okay.
And then cut from 114 to 105, which I know sounds like not very much when we hear about all
But
these other guys
no, I just
percent.
think I still think this weight cutting thing. I understand it of sorts, but I still can't wrap my head around it. I think I know I'm gonna get slated for this, but I just think if you weigh 118, you should fight at 118. You know,
Uh, yeah, listen, you're not going to hear too much of an argument from me. I mean, obviously, you've got to create some weight classes, and then if you have too many, it kind of dilutes the meaning of a championship belt. And I mean, and people are always going to try to find an edge, so they're always. I mean, it's kind of a it's kind of a cultural thing that I don't know if it's going to go away anytime soon, but I do feel like it's changing. I feel like it's changed a lot in the last 3 years.
mm,
You're seeing more and more people fight closer to their weight class, but even then, like I have a teammate who I'm trying to decide whether how much I should say, but he's a featherweight, and he's on vacation right now, and he's certainly not out of shape because he just fought,
mhm.
and he's walking around low 90s, 190,
What?
192. Yeah, yeah. That's now. That being said, everyone, including our coach, has been like, "You're never seeing featherweight again. We're not
Yeah,
allowing you to do that to yourself again. You're fighting lightweight." But even then, cutting the
I
lightweight's not
know.
easy.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. You are right. I mean, you couldn't have like 1,000 different weight classes, but I just think, I mean, I think with one championship, they do like hydration tests, and then you basically fight around. So I think you can only cut like, is it 5 pounds or something? So it's a small amount of
I
weight.
think, yeah, that I don't know the exact regulations that they have, but that sounds about right. And they do hydration tests in certain states here, but not everywhere. You're right that, and it's still an issue for.
Yeah. You still with us, Laura?
All right, sorry, I think we had a hiccup there from the technology not loving, but honestly, you're in the UK, I'm here. This is magic. If
Yes,
I'm honest.
it certainly is, but we don't have cauldrons and broomsticks.
You don't. I do. You just can't see it. I'm back here. I'm stirring. I'm stirring. Um, what I was saying though was, yeah, our Grant, he's not gonna make featherweight ever again. Even that cut to 55 is tough. But yeah, and the cut that I was making in 105 was also tough, even though it was just 7 pounds. I couldn't. I would lose my hearing. I was bleeding out of orifices I
Oh
won't
no.
mention that I'm not supposed to be bleeding out of. So it was kind of a mess.
Yes, trustfully. I mean, as you say, and there's been a last 2 to 3 years, there's been a plethora of fighters moving up in weight, some having great success, others, like Kevin Lee, for instance, he's kind of up and down, and he's got tremendous talent. I think
He does.
he's with a good team now. He's with a good team. He had an excellent victory, but I think that last one in Brazil, was it Cowboy? Was it Oliveira? Was it
Oh,
Oliveira?
ew, you're testing my memory. This is where I fall short as a reporter when people ask me when or where are certain matchups in the past. My mind, it's such a jumble.
Well, because you're so far in advance, to be fair, because you're thinking about what fights are coming up as well. So it would be
I wish I
hard.
had a brain that retained information in that way. My boss is like that. He can tell you when, where, the details, I wish my brain worked like that. I'm
Well,
jealous.
your talent is elsewhere. Let's put it that way. So, what would you think, dream matchup wise, if you could speak to Uncle Dana, what matchups would you make for this year? And obviously this is fantasy, so it doesn't matter if they've just fought or they're hurt, so you can
Okay.
go for anything.
Ooh, well, I would love to see Jorge versus, I mean, honestly, the fight I want to see, and I don't even know that it makes tons of sense right now, but it makes sense on a certain level. I'm dying to see Jorge versus McGregor, but I think that they'll probably keep that one in the back pocket because the gate on that would
Yeah,
be ridiculous.
bananas.
Ridiculous. So I can see them kind of not wanting to, to do that right now. I'll watch Jorge fight anybody. I think that last fight was not his greatest performance for a number of reasons, but when you watch round one, that to me is an indication of what he's capable of in terms of wrestling, and he looked damn good, if you
Mm.
ask me. And that being said, Kamaru Usman, it's hard to think of anybody that's going to really, that you're like, oh yeah, he's going to go in there, he's going to take care of business. Kamaru is a tough puzzle for anybody to figure out. This isn't a dream matchup. This is happening. I'm super excited for the Khabib Justin fight. That's going to be bananas as well.
Who have you got?
Let me think about some female fights. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So who have you got for Khabib and Gaethje?
It's hard not just, you gotta have, I feel like you have to go Khabib. Almost. You almost have to.
He's
As much
been
as I am sold on Justin Gaethje. So, and I have been for a while, to be clear. I have been for a long time. And that last performance was magical. I
exactly.
just don't know if anybody can beat Khabib. I just don't know.
I understand the sentiment, and I would partially agree, but based upon what Gaethje was able to do to El Kakui, and it was so hard to watch that fight.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there wasn't much takedowns of sorts that took place in that fight. It was pretty much a stand-up battle. But
Yeah.
his calmness and demeanor that he's had over the last two fights now, I
Yeah.
think he's that much polished. I think he's at his peak now with those chopping leg kicks that he's got. Oh my days, Khabib's got problems.
Yes. And here's the thing I think about that makes Justin Gaethje's kicks so special in my mind. Justin Gaethje can leg chop you from boxing distance.
Yes.
Almost from clinch distance.
Mm-hmm.
He can, the way that his hips work, and I think too, he's got shorter arms. So when he's in the pocket, he's really in the pocket. And it's incredible how he can connect with a leg kick when he's in boxing range.
Yeah.
Not many people can do that. Most people kick from the outside. Justin Gaethje can kick from the outside also, but he can kick when you're clinched up with him. It's unreal. And people, you don't find that, so people are not used to dealing with that. And that's a problem. That is a freaking problem. Do you want to get that close to Khabib? I would think not. But I think the key for Justin in that fight is going to be his ability to get off the fence, because Khabib's wrestling in the open mat, to be honest with you, isn't like, I'm not, my jaw's not hitting the floor when he's shooting a double leg on the open mat. He's obviously, it's Khabib. He's really good. Yes. But where he's really, really good is pinning you up against the cage, and then just the shot, the reshot, the up, down, and then just, completely taking away all of your posts, your ability to defend yourself, and then just beating you to a pulp in that manner. So it's going to be a great. Now you got me all excited about that.
I know. And it's been announced as well, hasn't it? Isn't it October sometime?
Yes. Yeah.
So yes, and obviously thoughts and prayers are with the family for the loss of his father and stuff. So it was interesting to see that he made the decision to have that turnaround so quick. I was potentially thinking he would wait until 2021. But correct me if I'm wrong. Is it 100% correct that he's only doing 2 fights and he's going to retire?
That's what he stated pretty clearly, and he seems like a guy who doesn't say things
Yeah.
like that for the heck of saying it. So yeah, I think 2 fights and then he's gonna hang it up, which I applaud him for, for doing that, for getting to the mountaintop potentially,
Mm.
and then calling it good. I think these last 2 fights are going to be pretty special. And I was with you. I was worried that we might not see him for a long time.
Mm.
Maybe ever, when you've accomplished that much and you've gone through what he's been through, how close he was with his dad. It's not unheard of to think that that just completely changes your priorities and your mindset. But it sounds like his dad's desire was always for him to be 30-0.
Yes.
So now that's his new goal.
So Gaethje next October. Trustfully, Tony can knock one out the box, and we could possibly, if Dana can do it, do a 6th time matchup. Because I really think. I mean, obviously the last performance with El Kukui was, that wasn't him there. But just with his style that he's got, he's hittable clearly, and he's made some comments to say, look, I can't get hit like that anymore. I just think Tony is just it's like, I don't know, it's that kind of style that he's got, that funk jitsu that he's got, snap jitsu even. I think that would be a very good matchup. I think that would be a good back and forth, and with those elbows he's got off his back, the submissions he's got, I think we need to see that. I think we definitely need to see that before he goes. I don't think we need to have the talks with him and McGregor running it back again. I think it was decisive what happened. McGregor had some very good rounds with his takedown defense. We can't deny that. But Khabib did what he did, submitted the guy. I think he needs to fight people who he hasn't fought before and get that victory. If he wants that 30-0, forget the rematches. I know it would clearly be lots of money involved if there was a Khabib or Habib and Connor too. But I think we do Gaethje, we do Ferguson, and then he can sail off into the sunset trustfully with his 30-0 intact. That would be my sort of wish.
That would be incredible. It is unbelievable to me that fight has been booked 5 times. How, and the circumstances surrounding the cancellation. I mean, I'm not a very superstitious person, but how can you not think that matchup is cursed?
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's just crazy, but I want to see it. I so desperately want to see it. I'm with you.
Everybody wants to see it. Everybody does. The quote-unquote MMA gods, they've got to make it happen at some point before 2021's out. We're going to see that poster again for the 6th time, and they're actually going to be in the octagon fighting.
Maybe the one thing that would go right in 2020. The one thing.
Well, yeah. 2020 is a kind of a write-off, but thanks to Dana and the owners, we've at least had some combat sports for the last few months. That has been excellent. We had the Bellator event recently. Today we had one championship on as well. So it seems like news-wise, it's crazy. And there's more stuff taking place with further lockdowns within the UK and stuff. But it was, for me at least, it kind of felt like things were kind of getting back to normal of sorts. As I say, 2 more other major MMA promotions were holding events as well. I was thinking, okay, and sporting, I think, isn't it MLB? They've been going for a bit, haven't they?
Yep. It's kind of been limping along. We've had some cancellations, and it doesn't feel like a normal season. But yeah, I think things are slowly coming back. And I don't know, maybe it's the eternal optimist in me, but I feel like I feel like after this current, oh my gosh, it's happening again moment, that we will be heading toward more and more normalcy. It's funny because it's very different here where I live compared to other parts of the United States, compared to the other parts of the world. And I have to remind myself that other people are living in areas that are much more affected by this. But where I am, and then of course me working for the UFC, I've been really fortunate that other than some inconveniences, my life hasn't been affected too greatly. So I hope that we can all get back to business as usual soon enough.
Definitely, definitely. It's challenging to say the least. From obviously many people have lost businesses, lost jobs and stuff.
Yeah.
But in stressful times, in bad times, good things can happen. So as you say, being optimistic, being positive, trying to put the right things in place, I'm pretty sure we can, as a people globally, get out of this the right side, with as minimal impacts as we were currently having in regards to the death toll. The death toll is still pretty low.
Yep.
I mean, that doesn't bode well for people who have personally lost somebody, but in the greater scheme of things, it's not as bad. It's not billions or millions of people who are dying from this thing. So being positive, cup always half full. Trustfully, by the end of 2020, it will be a case of whoa, yeah, exactly, fingers and toes crossed.
I've got socks on. I can't do it.
It will be like, do you remember that 2020? That was a strange year. That
Oh,
was.
that was a weird one. That was a weird one.
Definitely. So back to your fantasy fights. I'm thinking you was gonna pick a female fight.
Yeah. I don't. I shouldn't have opened my mouth because now I'm sitting here, matchmaking.
Matchmaking.
Yeah. I would love to see Rose and Zhang Wei Li. I think that would be an incredible fight.
Well, isn't that pretty much on the cards? Obviously, it hasn't been officially signed, but isn't
Yeah,
that?
it has. Yeah, but I just I want to know when it's going to happen, and I want it to actually happen. I guess I
Yeah.
sometimes, I know Rose has a lot going on in her life, and she's been, touched by what's going
Yes.
on a lot. So I guess sometimes when her name gets booked, I'm still like, okay, let's actually see it happen though.
Mm.
But I would love to see that fight. I can't wait to see that fight. I think that Rose's technique and footwork is
Yeah.
actually superior to Joanna's. I mean, we saw that.
Well, we saw that
Joanna's
twice.
very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but her footwork is really what sets her apart, and her ability to find a shot at just the right moment. But then you've got Zhang Wei Li, who's
Ferocious.
she's just ferocious, and I don't think she gets affected by much. I don't see Zhang getting rocked anytime soon. Now, I probably would have said that about Joanna before she fought Rose as well. So I'm probably gonna, have to take those words back. But that's gonna be a hell of a fight because I don't see Zhang being affected too much by Rose, but I think Rose will be able to get to her in the right moments as long as the consistent,
Yeah.
bulldozing forward damage that Zhang can bring doesn't affect Rose too much.
I think that's going to be a very tough fight for Rose. Very tough fight, especially especially based upon the Joanna fight with Whaley. That was something out of this world. That was true heart, guts, glory, everything.
Yeah.
And the hematoma on Joanna's. Oh my gosh! Wow.
That fight made me proud to be a female mixed martial artist. That was like, okay, that is what we're all capable of. And to me, not we're all capable of, but you know what I mean? That's what the sport's capable of. That to me was a real signal of where women's MMA has come, because there was a time, and it still happens. Women's MMA is not at the same place as men's MMA. It's a much younger sport.
Mm-hmm.
People who participate in it have not been doing it as long. You don't get, NCAA Division II wrestlers transitioning over to women's A typically. You get good wrestlers, but it's not the same. So a lot of times the level of technique was not always there. The heart was always there.
Of course.
The desire to go out and fight and put on a good show, which is I think what drew the fan base in and continues to draw the fan base in.
Mm-hmm.
The ladies bring it, but there wasn't always that superior level of technique that you'd see on the men's side of things. And that fight, you saw it, and that was so cool.
Definitely, it should be inspiring women to, if they don't want to potentially go out into the octagon and fight, you know, I want to be able to protect myself. I want to be fit. I want to
Yeah.
be healthy. I think mixed martial arts, kickboxing, Muay Thai, I think I think all women should be doing some form of martial arts to keep themselves fit and healthy and to protect themselves in these worrying times with predatory males around the
Yeah.
place. Yeah, I think excellent. I think that's excellent. And I think that should be, and if it's not, that should be in the talking for fight of the year.
Oh, it would have to be. It would absolutely have to be. I think at least in terms of the World MMA Awards, I know it is in the running. So I think the consensus is that that is for sure up there. Got to be top 5, if not top 3.
Definitely, definitely. So let's switch things up a little bit. I know obviously you are involved in some extra outside of the UFC activities.
Yep.
So what are you getting your fingers and toes into currently?
Well, I have Contender Series, which I sort of, not UFC, but sort of is UFC. I've got
Yes.
Contender Series that is starting this coming week. I'll be leaving Monday to head out to Vegas to start the 10-week back and forth journey that I do. I love that show so much. I love that show so much. And this maybe isn't the best analogy for a UK audience, but here in the United States we have the NFL draft, which is, even if you're not a football fan, it's hard not to get swept up in the emotion of watching all these guys at home waiting to see if they're going to get picked and drafted into the NFL. And to me, the Contender Series is like, if somehow American football was an individual sport and they had to go play a game and then immediately after that game sit there and wait and see if they got drafted. That to me is the drama and the excitement of the Contender Series, because those guys go out there, and those women too, they go out there and they fight their asses off because Dana White is 10 feet away and contracts on the line.
Yes.
So I've got that coming up. Invicta FC, Invicta is my home, and it's where I got my start. So anytime my schedule allows, I'm back working in Invicta. A lot of times I'll have conflict with the UFC, and my contract with them states that I kind of have to make that a priority.
Yeah.
But I was looking at my calendar. I have a week coming up in September where I have 4 shows in 7 days.
Whoa.
Which is going to make my head explode. I have Contender on a Tuesday, Invicta on a Thursday, a UFC pay-per-view on Saturday, and then Contender again the next Tuesday.
Wow.
I'm like, oh my God, that's going to be rough.
That's work.
That is work. That is work. I like that American accent there. That is work. Yeah, so I've got that. And then, in addition to that, I try to stay busy outside of work with, my sponsors, and I live on a ranch. So life's all, I got a puppy. Apparently when I was in Abu Dhabi, my husband and son decided it would be a great time to get a puppy. So I'm dealing with potty training, a lot going on.
So you talk about sponsorship. Let's get into some more detail about that, mademoiselle.
Go ahead.
No,
Sorry.
go on. You continue.
I was going to say, so I have 2 companies that I really am super excited about, one of which I've been working with for a while, and it's a company called directhemp.com. I'm a huge fan of CBD and all of the benefits that I've seen from it. I was super skeptical about it, super skeptical. A, I don't smoke a lot. I don't smoke marijuana. And B, so I just kind of associated it with that.
Yes.
And I was like, that's not really for me. And then B, it sounded like snake oil because everybody kept saying, oh, it does this, it does this, it does that. And my mind's like, how could it do that and that? That doesn't make any sense. And so finally I had someone say, listen, just try it. Take it consistently for 30 days. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. And let me tell you, it's become a game changer for me, especially traveling a lot. My ability to sleep and stay asleep is the biggest thing. It doesn't make me tired, but it helps me stay asleep. And when I wake up, I actually feel like I was really asleep and got some rest. So that's one company, directhemp.com. And then I just got involved with another company called Eat to Evolve, and they send meal prep, healthy meals throughout the United States right to your door in a refrigerated box, and boom, you've got your keto or your paleo or whatever you need for the week. So I'm very happy with those two companies
Yeah,
keep me sane.
I can imagine. Now, with that
Yeah,
meal prep, is that more targeted to the athlete, or is that for anybody who wants to have a high quality
anybody.
diet?
Anybody. I would say it's probably not for cutting weight because those guys, that's
Mm,
a whole nother bag of rice. It's really for anybody who's kind of just looking to have a consistent, healthy lifestyle of eating. I will say this, I've turned down a lot of people that have offered me sponsorships, whether it's supplements or other meal prep type companies, because I've tried it. I've been like, I'm not excited about
mm.
eating this again, or it just wasn't that impressive. And they genuinely, above all else, it tastes phenomenal. I live on a ranch, and so I'm a meat snob. I'm a steak snob, and their steak was phenomenal. Their vegetables are fresh, and you can tell that they haven't been overcooked. And I'm super excited about it. It's made my life easier already, and I've only been working with them for about 3 weeks now.
Wow. So
Yeah,
clearly quality produce is being used.
yeah. And the guy who started it, and they have a whole team of actual trained restaurant chefs. The guy who started is a Michelin chef. So, but
Wow.
it's not just that it's good food, it's an interesting palate. Like I just had turmeric butter chicken, and it was incredible.
Turmeric's very good for you as well, anti-inflammatory and stuff, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
yes. Good. Okay. Um, is there anything else you want to explore before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I appreciate you having me on, and having such a fun, thoughtful conversation. I don't often get to talk about the origin story, if you will.
That's what it's all about.
Thank
That's what it's all about. How can people get in contact with you, Laura? What's the best social medias? Have you got websites, etc., etc.?
Yeah.
If you can tell us that.
I'm by far the most active on Instagram, and my Instagram handle is at Laura_Sanko, Sanko. And I genuinely try to respond to everybody who either comments on, one of my posts, or DMs me. If you give me enough time, I will eventually get back to you, as long as you're not weird to me. I will ignore it. But no, yeah, I really enjoy interacting with the fans, and that's probably the best place. And then also Twitter, exact same handle. I'm not on Facebook a whole lot, to be honest with you. I should,
Mm.
but I kind of focus on Instagram. So if you want to get a hold of me, that's the best place.
Well, I think they say Facebook's for the old folk. I think I'm sure I've heard quite a lot of people saying that. So you
Maybe.
yes, possibly. One last thing, I've totally
Yeah.
forgot to. I should have asked you at the start. Sanko, where does that name originate from?
Interesting. I think it's Czech. My husband is primarily Lebanese, though. He's definitely brown. Yeah, he's mostly Lebanese, but I think he's got a little bit of Czech on his dad's side. And then yeah, but from my background is I'm mostly Dutch. My grandparents are all from the Netherlands. I didn't get the
Ah.
height though. I did not get any of that Dutch height.
Well, I wouldn't say all most. Well, you are right. You are right. The multiple times I've been to Holland, yes, they are tall. They are
They're
tall
cute.
people.
They're cute.
Yes. Have you been there at all?
Yeah, I've been there a handful of times, and there's a place in the United States called Holland, Michigan, which is where my family is originally from, my parents anyway, in Grand Rapids, which is right next to it, which it's almost a running joke how densely populated it is with American Dutch people. I mean, the phone book is
Yeah.
a joke in and of it's De Young, Vander this, Vander
Yes.
that, and basically the saying in Grand Rapids is if you're not Dutch, you're not much. So
That rhymes as well.
yeah, and my brother went to college there, and he's only 5'8". I remember his freshman year, he called home and he's like, "Where have you guys sent me? These women are huge. I can't date anyone here."
And don't forget, New York was formerly named
Yes, New
before
Amsterdam.
New
Yeah,
Amsterdam. Yes, you know your history well, mademoiselle.
yeah.
It has been great conversation. Thanks very much for your time. I will leave links below to all of your social medias. Um, and yes, thank you very much. Enjoy the evening. Don't forget, everybody, like, comment, and subscribe.
Thank you guys. Thank you, Nobel. Appreciate you.